Welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, addressing all aspects of the digital enterprise, inspiring connection without boundaries and creation without limits. Thank you for tuning in. Here are your hosts, Thom Singer and Craig Brown.
Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Thank you so much for coming along on the journey of this show that is now a year old and was designed to be a resource for those who work in and around PLM. The Digital Enterprise Society, it is the forum for the exchange of ideas surrounding the tools, processes, and practices used across the product lifecycle. To learn more, visit digitalenterprisesociety.org. So my name is Thom Singer, and I have the honor to co-host this show every week with Craig Brown, an industry veteran and a former PLM leader at General Motors. Hey, Craig, how are you today?
I'm great, Tom. Glad we're back together again and looking forward to today's chat.
Can you believe we've
different again?
Can you believe we've been doing this for a year?
Actually, I can, because I just listened to Realize Live, and it was good. It was so strange to do it virtually, but they did a good job. We had about it was 2 half days, which is about all you can do sitting in your own room, and I learned a little bit, so that was kind of nice. And 1 year, because it was a year ago last year's event that we had started this.
That's exactly right.
Kind of interesting.
That's right. Well, every single week, Craig and I try to bring to this podcast interesting interviews and other ideas that are going to help all the listeners enhance and grow their careers. And today, like all weeks, is going to be another one of those days. Today, we have Alena Keck, and she is the Lean-Agile Transformation Manager at Aptiv. Hey, Alena, welcome to the show.
Hi, and thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for this opportunity to share my experience with your audience.
Oh, great to have you. So what's your background? What did you do before, and how did you get to Aptiv and doing what you're doing today?
So my whole background can be wrapped out in one sentence. I consider that life is too short to stay in the comfort zone, so I love new challenges, and I've been always actively looking for those. In my life, I try to do different things, and I end up studying in 3 different European countries, in Belarus, where I originally come from, also in Germany and in France. And all of those studies were fully funded by scholarships, which was really, really cool. And I learned a lot from this intercultural experience very early in my career path, and also from different systems and education systems. So I started my career in automotive because I really believe that automotive will never run out of challenges, and it will keep me busy for a while. And I learned both the business side of automotive, working at Daimler headquarters in Stuttgart, doing different positions in marketing and sales, both in Germany and in France. Then I moved to the US and learned the IT side of transformation and IT side of automotive, where we were focused on creating a digital seamless experience for our customers. And recently I joined Aptiv as a transformation manager, as you already mentioned. And here I'm transforming very complex embedded systems for autonomous driving, active safety, and user experience on their transformation journey, which is kind of pretty cool because I really believe that agile and lean principles can help an automotive industry to transform and solve some of the challenges we are facing.
Well, so Alena, it's good to see you again. You and I got to know each other last fall. We ended up on a panelist together at a company that we both use. And I've decided to work with him a little bit, one of my other gigs here in sort of semi-retirement. But one of the things that I found interesting was your last point there about bringing agile to automotive. In my way of thinking, automotive is kind of agile already. If you go back to clinics and involving customers and getting their feedback and adjusting cars. Now, this had more to do with adjusting a spring or changing the color or being leather instead of cloth, right? Not so much what you and I talked a lot about at the conference, which was agile software, though that's how I got to the car business from the aerospace business, was embedded systems. This is back in the late 1980s now. But in any case, one of the things the mechanical PLM world really doesn't understand, I think, is this whole point we make about waterfall versus agile. And I really liked how well you summarized that at the conference. Could you give us a quick overview of that? And you know, the IT departments of car companies tend to be waterfall. And so with that as a teaser, describe for us what they are and how they're different.
All right. So I think the biggest difference between this traditional waterfall approach and agile approach is that traditional approach is very plan driven. So you really believe and think that you can predict everything, and a good plan will make it work. And if there are changes, it's more about the team doing something or assumptions being kind of changing, but not about the plan, right? And it works for a lot of areas. For example, if you have a construction project and you have a lot of well-defined steps and you did it over and over again, this could be a good approach to do. But if you handle really complex, very unknown systems, where you know that you will uncover a lot of things, there will be a lot of change and you will learn along the way, then this predictive method, which really assumes that you know already everything from the very beginning and you can describe it, doesn't really work. So agile way of working works really for empirical and very complex systems where you learn through iterations.
And that's why I think it's like the car companies. If you go back in our history, you know, we were probably waterfallish like. We built one, it was a Model T, and as long as you liked black, it was okay, right? And then these guys from what became General Motors showed up and offered all kinds of different colors and all kinds of different metal and all kinds of different leather. And before you knew it, consumer taste, which was a very style-driven thing, was driving what the next car looked like. Now the fundamentals didn't change, and so I think there's this interesting combination. So I'd ask the listeners that have any interest or any experience with car companies, look at the things that we do, from calibration to the annual model year makeover where we change the colors. That's a form of agile because we're listening to consumer taste, right? Whereas the mechanical side, well, we got to make it robust, and yes, we've been doing it for 80 years. So doing the next internal combustion engine is easy. Well, yeah, until we say we're not doing them anymore. And now we're going to go off and do electric motors, which we're pretty good at those too, but the batteries are kind of new, right? And so I think learning loops, learning fast is a big deal with the current energy storages of battery systems. So then summarize for our audience the top 4 benefits of agile practices.
So I think there are a lot of benefits, and a lot of studies prove that those benefits are replicated in multiple industries in multiple countries. Some of those, which are the key, or what every company wants to see from the agile adoption, is time to market. Companies do not only have to become the best company right now, but they should become the fastest, right? It's all about the speed right now. Therefore, time to market is crucial. Quality is a very big one for a lot of companies, especially in automotive. As in iterative development process, you really test every iteration and you retest and you automate the testing. It gets you into the discipline of testing, which really dramatically improves your quality.
So that's a good difference from waterfall. Because waterfall is kind of like you do a lot of building and then you come to a big integration point and you go off and test it for a while. Continuous testing, on the other hand, kind of improves quality as you go. So that's great. 2 more.
Customer focus and customer satisfaction. You mentioned it in GD Power surveys and clinics. I think it's a good design thinking tool, but what is different in the agile world is that you do not focus on just one big idea as a result of those surveys. You run a lot of experiments and you involve your customer not after 5 years as you launched it, but really along the way, and you try to prove your hypothesis and pivot and try not to select one big idea, but test with very cheap testing tools, whether your assumption is right? Do not throw everything into one basket kind of part. And the employee happiness, right? Sustainable work environment, sustainable and fun work environment, team collaboration is something which a lot of people around the world are really enjoying, and they don't want to work in silos. They don't want to work alone. They really want to work in teams and leverage the learnings from each other.
Oh, that hits a nerve right now with everything we're doing with working remotely. We'll come back to that in a second. So then what slows Agile down? I mean, it sounds like it should just be obvious we should do it.
Yeah, we should do it. And I think automotive can do it, but there are a lot of things which slow down the transformation. One of them is the wrong expectation or wrong expectation setting, right? Because a lot of company thinks it's just about becoming agile and it's the ultimate goal. It's not about creating the best product in the most sustainable pace with the best quality.
You mean you'll buy my car if I'm agile? Is that? Yeah, you're right. They missed the point, right? Yeah.
So it's the agile is a kind of a toolbox which can help you to get there, but the goal should be delivering value to the customers fast and with quality in a sustainable pace. So the biggest one is expectation setting, and a lot of times when you start a transformation, your consulting partner can kind of collect some of the low-hanging fruits from the transformation, and once they leave the company on their own, then only the heavy lifting items are left. And those are really hard to transform, like, for example, the architecture to come to a truly continuous integration, continuous delivery, or some other infrastructural items. They are hard to transform. They're not so attractive as transforming the customer features and delivering very tangible customer value. And those were not calculated at the beginning, or people were not thinking about those things. So it could be a roadblock from transformation.
So if you're a manager and you should do agile, give me your perspective on how to do that. Or if you're a worker and you've been told to be a part of agile, help with this mindset. For both of those roles, what should they do to be open and to embrace it quickly?
So for the manager, it's the biggest change, right? Because the management role is really turned upside down. The biggest change for managers is making the agile values really tangible and realizing that it's not about making the teams being agile and doing the ceremonies and doing the demos retrospective, but it's about actually the leadership team becoming agile and cross-functional team and solve those impediments, roadblock, and everything which we see as a transformation challenge related to change or related to different risks and impediments as a team, right? This is something, so they need to embrace this team concept for them and trying to collaborate more across divisions, across the teams, and solve the problems together. So this will be a recommendation for managers, and try to make this new leadership concept tangible for them and brainstorm with their colleagues, because a lot of times they are on their own and trying to figure it out instead of really sharing and seeing, okay, what can we do different, and create like a community of practice for leaders in this transition. For the teams themselves, is they really need to be very good in communicating the successes, because at the beginning it's about really selling the case for agile and showing that it's working, and the better communication skill they have to demonstrate the results and to really demonstrate the passion for the change, the more successful they will be in communicating to different management levels and getting more buy-in for the transformation.
So that's one of the challenges for engineers. We tend to be a bunch of introverts. And you and I have never been accused of that, but there are lots of us that are introverts. So they need to, you're right, communicate clearly, but also with enthusiasm. So in your presentation that I heard last fall, and then you've given it again here recently at a couple other forums, you have 4 main pillars or 4 main topics that you talk about. Can you give us a 1-minute summary of each one, introduce it and summarize it?
So when I talk about the challenges in automotive industry, I differentiate between 4 key areas. 2 of them are really fundamental, and they are independent from the industry. They are change management and organizational structure. Those should be set up first for a successful transformation. And then I talk about the industry-specific ones, which can only be built up on the strong foundation. These are embedded systems and regulatory environment. So for the change management, the most important thing is from the very beginning to have a guiding coalition driving the change, which consists of very powerful cross-functional team of leaders driving a change around, across the organization.
And that's what we about the Digital Enterprise Society, that's what we're about is, you get all these words in the press about, we should transform digitally and all this other stuff. Well, it is more than just buy a bunch of tools that are based on your computer. It is about making changes, especially process changes, which was this conference you and I were about, is about process management and evolution. So, okay, so I get that, change management, organization.
Organizational structure is a big one because, and we were talking about the Conway's Law and some other conversations.
Yeah, that's come up in these discussions before. It was interesting. Somebody else mentioned that a couple months ago, and I went off on a tangent on them. Probably because I talked to you, but anyways, yeah. So describe what Conway's Law is and why it's important to appreciate it.
So what basically the Conway's Law says that organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of their communication structure in the organization. It actually means that if you have departments for every layer of your IT systems or your embedded systems, then you would also have a very fractioned communication, and your design and your architecture will be kind of very broken with many interfaces which you actually don't need. And if you start a transformation, you have this collaborative environment where you create the architecture together as a cross-functional team.
You know, you reminded me of something. So now we're going to do autonomous vehicles. That's what you're into. That's what I left. And we're going to do them really well. And yet we got an IT silo and we got different engineering silos. I remember one time in my career where we were having debates about who owned embedded software, and the IT department said, well, we do, because we do software. And I had a leader I worked for, I was in engineering, and he said to the guy who led IT, he said, you know, it comes with warranty. And it was a fun debate because we argued for several weeks, and in 1 minute, the senior executive on my side, we kept embedded software and engineering because of this point about, you know, the IT world. And it's just an example, everybody that's listening. It's just a difference of our domains, right? Well, if you're not willing to change your organization, you're probably not going to transform. And autonomous vehicles are going to demand an organizational transformation. I don't know how else you're going to do it, right? So interesting. Thanks for that memory. I'm actually glad I don't have to have those arguments anymore. So you've got two more: embedded systems and
regulatory and compliance, right? So for embedded systems, the biggest point of the transformation of embedded system is to pay attention to integration points, because not the reports, not the project plans are the true indicator of success or progress. Only the successful integration points are. And the more you do it on cadence and go through this painful experience at the beginning and put a structure and put a tool set which can support your continuous integration and really full system integration as often as possible, the more successful you will be.
And that's no different than mechanical. It's the same point. There are integration points in mechanical, from body to chassis to powertrain to shafts that transfer energy. And so interface management is really no different, other than it's a lot slower, because it's slower to build a part in metal than it is to build some software. So interesting. And then compliance?
Yeah, so in the pure agile approach, a lot of people kind of think that you can ignore documentation, you can ignore a lot of other things because it's on the other side of the transformation, right? Only because it's on the other side, it doesn't mean we need to ignore it. So automotive is very heavily into regulations and compliance. Therefore, in order to transform, you need to pay attention and integrate continuous compliance. So basically, when you're designing a feature, you should also do the traceability, the whole documentation for this one feature. So you decompose it in a small chunks of functions and do the compliance portion, so compliance checks, or for example, cybersecurity tests. You run them for every feature and function.
So Agile will get us more compliant because we keep it front and center from the very beginning.
Yeah, it can get you this continuous compliance rather than in the traditional project. What always happens is that it's at the end and it's kind of a little bit delayed or always deprioritized.
Well, everybody listening that's in the car business knows that's the typical warranty problem is either a missed interface, which is inexcusable, or a missed regulation, which is also inexcusable, but it's what you described. So much so in the past, it's been a thing done at the end, right, as opposed to done throughout.
And also for those, for example, functional safety or cybersecurity engineers, it's much more fun to collaborate with the teams rather than just to write a document, or rather just to sit in a corner and write a safety case, right? It's much more fun to demonstrate the progress, to really inspire the other people and help them with their own expertise, to transform this expertise to the engineers. Interesting.
Well, we're in this pandemic time, and I'm wondering, we've asked a lot of our guests since mid-May. How's COVID-19 impacted your work?
Our transformation team is a global team. So every day I have like 3 shifts. I talk to my
describe to people where you are. You're in the same time zone I am, but you're here in the Detroit area, right?
Yeah. So right now I'm in Detroit area, but my mornings start very early because I communicate with my Asia colleagues. Then the normal morning is for Europe, and then I can focus on my own region. So basically, as I was working with people from other regions through my whole career, it didn't impact my mornings because they were already distributed and very remote. In the afternoons, what I did with the teams, like for example, some of the workshops I was doing, like value stream mapping, are very hard to do remotely because you really need to pick up a lot of nonverbal communication and really realize what is it that the teams are struggling, which is just very hard when you just see the face on the video. But what I, for example, experimented with is remote usability testing. Because I thought just before the pandemic, I scheduled the next round of usability testing, and I decided the cost of delay of not doing it would be much bigger than to do it in a suboptimal environment per video and per screen sharing. And it turned out very, very well, and we got a lot of learnings, and I think we can really make it happen even remote.
Interesting. So how will our work change in engineering? If you can do this work remotely, or just pretty successful, will this change the way we continue working when the pandemic's over?
So in the automotive industry specifically, there were a lot of examples which demonstrated very growth of agility overnight. Like, for example, automotive companies start developing COVID-19 rapid tests, or producing masks, and even automating masks production or shield production, which is really something which they would never think they could be able to do. So it shows that automotive industry can do different, engineers can think different and out of the box, and it also shows that those cross-functional teams or T-shaped skill set of engineers, they can really work when they're needed. If you believe in a self-organizing organization, and if you believe in the big purpose, that a lot of things can happen even in spite of pandemic, and in spite of being remote, and in spite of a lot of distractions.
You know, that topic you just touched on, that's come up before as well, self-organizing teams. And I actually think that is somewhat the future. And a lot of senior management, and I'm probably old enough to be considered senior in age at least, they don't really understand it. They assume that it's a management function to organize the effective experts to go work on a problem. And in fact, what the younger generation, your age and younger, is showing is that self-organizing teams are actually much more effective, mostly because everybody involved is passionate, right? And they really want to go solve the problem. And I found it nice. Some of them call and say, hey, Craig, we want you on the team just to listen and tell us what we're missing, right? In terms of the experience or other things. So it's a lot of fun. You know, I don't know how soon you and I will be a panelist again. We both know the folks at Method Park, so chances are sooner rather than later. But it may be this way. It may be virtually on a bunch of audio, and maybe we'll record video. Today, as we're doing this podcast, where we can see each other, but it still was more fun being in the room, getting those tough questions. And in any case, it's been a joy chatting with you. And I think it's time for me to pass it back to Tom. Thanks, Alena.
Thank you, Craig. So, Alena, before I let you go, I do have a question for you. In the introduction, when I asked you to kind of talk about where you started and how you got there, you said something about yourself that really resonated with me that I want to kind of ask you about. And that was, I wrote it down, you said you love to get past your comfort zone. So as advice for people who are listening to this, I think that's really important. If people want to grow, if they want to get to that next promotion, if they want to position themselves for opportunities to get plucked up or out, but it's not a natural thing. A comfort zone is comfortable by definition, by the name comfort zone, it's comfortable. What advice do you have for people to shake up their comfort zones?
All right. So one advice to shake up their comfort zone would be really to actively seek for feedback. It is very uncomfortable, especially if you really want to have a good, true, genuine feedback from other people. And if you seek out for feedback, not only for people you like, but from people which are different from you, right? And once you collect feedback from a lot of people, and you have, you realize the patterns, and then you start focusing on what is unique about you, because everyone has multiple strengths. But what is really truly powerful is this combination of strength and leveraging it very intentionally, and to develop your career path and to develop your other skill set, which are complementary for your strength.
That's interesting.
I think that's interesting. I think that's a good.
Yeah,
I think that's a good
stay
way.
Curious and get out of your comfort zone. Okay.
I think that's a good way to end. I think that gets people to have to think and to pull their boots up a little bit and be willing to get that feedback.
I mean, at our time, I mean, if we're not out of our comfort zone right now, we haven't been in, I mean, this is pretty extreme what's going on with the pandemic.
My comfort zone got exploded the last 4 months, Craig.
Yeah, well, yeah. And at the moment, I don't know what to think. I tell you, I was getting pretty comfortable a week ago, and now it's, the trends are back up again, right? We'll publish this in a couple weeks or less, but I hope when people hear this that we're not in a nationwide lockdown, but we might be. You don't know.
Well, we can't predict what the future holds, and comfort zones might not be what they used to be, but I'm bullish about the future. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Alena, what do you think?
I think the change will get even faster. So we need to be prepared to get really out of the comfort zone and on a regular basis and make it to the new normal.
Well, like I said,
well said. Thank you.
I think the future is going to look good. We just have to get to the future. So I'll end it with this. I saw an interesting little meme on social media, and it was a picture from the movie Back to the Future, and it was Marty McFly and the professor is looking at him very sternly, and it says, they're sitting in the DeLorean, and it says, whatever you do, don't set it to 2020.
No kidding. Really? Is that in the movie?
No. It was a joke that was on the internet.
It's a new joke. Okay. Wow.
If it was in the movie, we would have to think that Christopher Lloyd was a prophet, but no. So
yeah.
Right.
Well,
with
both of you be safe until we do this again. And
you bet.
Alena, we like having repeat guests, so you're on my short list. About 6 months from now, we'll do this again. We'll see where we're all talking from. You never know. It could be somewhere different.
That's right. Well, again, Alena, thank you for joining us. Craig, it's always a pleasure to spend this time with you. And for everybody who listened, thanks for being here. Join us next week for more thoughts, ideas, and information in and around product lifecycle management. The Digital Enterprise Society, it is the place for the exchange of ideas around digital manufacturing tools. Check us out at digitalenterprisesociety.org.
You've been listening to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Learn more about what you've heard here today at digitalenterprisesociety.org. Join us again next week for more connection without boundaries and creation without limits.